Welcome to UberCube, the podcast where we discuss all things Cube, but with refreshments. This is your host, Anthony Adams, aka UberBear, and I am joined tonight by not one, but two special guests. We've got Christian Anderson, who is a previous guest on the show. He was recently in our poker episode, in addition to our Cube Essentials episode. Without further introduction of Mr. Christian, who's well known to the community, we've got a new individual who's joined our team. His name is...
I'm Nathan Black. I've been playing Magic since 1994, shortly after it was it was released. My first experience with Cube was actually, I tried to build my own fora of Cube with commons and uncommons. It was really fun to play, but it really was not officially a Cube. It wasn't until I met Anthony we actually got to try, some of his amazing cubes that I really got interested in the concept. But I've been playing off and on since, I think I took a break during Mercadian Masks through 8th edition. But that's pretty much it. I've been playing Magic that whole time, and I very much enjoy it.
Yeah, so Nathan and Christian and Stu and all of us, they're part of our play group, and we wanted to do something different. This podcast was meant to be a community podcast, and that being said, it's also, as far as I'm concerned, it's part of my friend circle too. So I want to give everybody a chance, have the opportunity, and we wanted to create diversity of insight here at UberCube. So it's not all single-threaded, just both myself and Stu's opinions on Cube. We wanted to get the feel and look of our players and other curators in our group. So that being said, before we go into the topic, we're going to do the thing that we always do here at UberCube, and we're going to enjoy our libations of the show. Christian, what are you having this evening?
I'm having a Hopsecutioner by Terrapin. It is a great beer. Just fantastic.
And Nathan, what are you having?
I'm having a tall glass of water, much like myself.
And that is super refreshing. And I am having Depth Perception by Terrapin. Let's go ahead and crack these suckers open. Let's get to the show. All right. Before we get doing this, we're going to do something a little interesting here. I'm going to kick the show off, but in order to pay homage to Christian Anderson, it's going to be his Bant Enchantment cube that we're covering tonight. Or I believe I said that right, Bant Enchantment cube. He's going to be the curator. And to do something a little different here, both he and Nathan are going to be your hosts for the evening. But in order to set the tone for this particular podcast, I wanted to start out with a little quote to help set the mood. It's going to be from Homer of the Odyssey. If only the gods are willing, they rule the vaulting skies. They're stronger than I plan and drive things home. That being said, I'm going to pass the microphone over to your guest host for this evening.
As Anthony mentioned, I'm going to be one of your special hosts tonight, and I'm Christian Anderson. This is my Bant Enchantment cube, and I really, really like the Theros block because I'm a big proponent for the mythology and all that behind it, and so you can't have an enchantment cube without a bunch of enchantment creatures, and that's where they were based out of. And so I have 58 and different enchantment creatures in here. For this cube, I wanted to try to avoid hexproof and protection to kind of really give the players agency to actually enchant their creatures, actually get a chance to play with them. It's just a lot harder to deal with the hexproof, and it can just really lead to some feel bads and just really can suck the fun out of it. The removal at this cube is at a premium. A lot of enchantment based removal in here. And a lot of the removal, if you're going to remove something, you're going to give your opponent something. So it's going to come at a cost. It's also very heavy with auras, or gifts from the gods, only to the devoted. If you're going to have an enchantment cube, you have to have Bestow. And Bestow is a keyword ability that was introduced in Theros, and it's connected to God theme of the set. What that does is all the creatures with Bestow, you can play it as an enchantment creature, or you can pay the Bestow cost, and that allows you to basically play it as an aura and attach it onto a creature. Then, if that creature that you have enchanted it on dies, it will fall off and then become an enchantment creature itself. One of the other things that is featured in Cube heavily is Constellation. And Constellation is a ability that will trigger when an enchantment enters the battlefield, and just kind of giving an extra bonus for that. And I have a table here. This is in the show notes. You can look. I have a total of 94 creatures out of my 180 cards in the cube. Then there's also 93 enchantments out of that 180. So there's a lot of enchantments. You'll get a lot for all the payoffs that you can have with the enchantment cube. You have enchantresses in there. You have all that. I'll give it over to Nathan to cover some of the mechanics and archetypes granted by the gods.
All right. As Christian said, I also am a huge fan of enchantments. Love this concept of like the gods bestowing these things on their devoted. And when you kind of break this down, you go into like the colors. White gives you lifelink and double strike. Those are two very powerful abilities. Not a lot of them have both, but when they do, it can be very swingy in games. Blue is going to be your flying. That's going to be your card draw. You need a lot of card draw to make sure you can just plow through that deck as soon as you can and just kind of really take care of your opponent. This, as he mentioned earlier, this has got a lot of interaction because a lot of things don't have hexproof or shroud. So, when you get that card that can take out a card of theirs, you just do it. You just go ahead and keep doing that. Green, you have trample and reach, and then of course +1/+1 counters, which obviously can get out of hand if they're not stopped. But there's a lot of great removal in here, as we'll get to in a little while. Celestia is going to be your ramp. That's going to also be a lot of constellation and control. Constellation, a lot of times, especially with certain cards, allow you to get more card draw for green, which is something green didn't do for a long time. But Constellation really allows you to do that because when those enchantments come into play, they recognize each other, and you get this constellation effect, which is sometimes drawing a card or something else that might benefit your whole team. Azorius, Bestow. Bestow is a fantastic ability. Being able to change, enchant something, and then when it does die, you still get something out of it. As he said, using those some of the removal spells that take care of something, but they give your opponent something else is great. And control has always been something Azorius has been good with, and tempo. They can definitely keep up with kind of, I wouldn't say the game would get slowed down, but when you have an aggro deck, Azorius is there to stop it, to kind of slow it down a little bit. And then Simic, you've also got ramp, Constellation, Bestow, some counters, and control. People have said over the years that Simic is a little too good. I'm going to probably agree with that. Simic has kind of gotten a little bit out of hand. But, it's funny because you list all these different things for the different color combinations, and then Simic gets all of them. So...
Yeah, no, Simic's not too busted. It's fine. I'm sure it'll be great. If you're having a enchantment cube, you want to have the gods. And the gods they control all things mortal in this 180 cube. So I have gods and demigods in here. And we have another quote. Fear, to the wrath of the heavens, lest the gods should be displeased and turn upon you. Homer from the Odyssey. I have a hands selected few gods in here, and there's also some demigods. If you want to cover the first one here, Nathan.
Sure. The first one is Heliod, which is Zeus himself. Your indestructible 5/6 for 3 colorless and 1 white. As long as your devotion to white is less than 5, Heliod isn't a creature, so it starts off as a legendary enchantment. Other creatures you control have vigilance, very popular and powerful with white. And then 2 colorless and 2 white, put a 2/1 white cleric enchantment creature token onto the battlefield. So you can sit there building up an army with Heliod, just him by himself without even having the devotion that you need. So he's a really great card, and I do love the reference to Zeus with him.
Yeah, and it also, pumping out those creatures, those are also enchantment creatures, so you can hit off your enchantresses and your constellations with that too. Heliod is just out the park here. Next one we're going to cover is Thassa, the god of the sea. She's a 5/5 indestructible god for 2 colorless and 1 blue. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, you get to scry 1. You wouldn't think that's that great, but that can really change around the game.
Absolutely. I run Thassa in my Merfolk deck. It's the other ability at the bottom there. It's 1 colorless and 1 blue. Target creature control can't be blocked this turn, which can be incredibly powerful. The one fear that we have when you've got these gods in here is they are indestructible. So, the destruction ability is not going to do anything to them. So there's a lot of good exile removal in here to take care of those with, I think you use cards like Oblivion Ring and those sorts of things to take care of the gods, because there's no other way to take care of a god than exiling them, pretty much.
Yeah. Definitely had to make sure that you had some agency to remove the gods if you have them in there. So I have things like I have a Path to Exile. Again, that's probably the most premium removal you're going to get out of this set or this cube. And then you have other things like, enchantment based removal that you can flash in and that will exile something. We'll cover some more of that later on. You have to have ways to deal with gods if you're going to put them in there. The next one we'll cover is Nylea, the god of the hunt. And she is a 6/6 indestructible, and as long as your devotion for green is less than 5, it isn't a creature. So once you get up to 5, you can start swinging in, and other creatures you control have trample. And then the bottom ability is for 3 and a green, target creature gets +2/+2 till end of the turn. I think, Nathan, you used this to pretty great effect against me, a game that we played recently.
Yeah, it's there's something pretty darn strong of giving everything you control trample. It's pretty much green's only real way of getting around things is, they're not going to be able to fly over it, and they're not going to be sneaky around it. They're just going to squash it. They're just going to pretty much flatten it and then do all the damage to the player. I love Nylea, and I also really love Thassa. Nylea is another great callback to Goddess of War, and Thassa will be the god of the sea. It even says god of the sea. And I really, really like the fact that they have her with a bow and arrow painted across the sky with that kind of constellation look. So we got a couple of demigods in here as well. One of the ones I really enjoy, Renata, Called to the Hunt, is 2 colors and 2 green. Her power is equal to your devotion to green. So she comes out as a 2/3. Her toughness is 3. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So, getting her down as quick as you can and then just playing a ton of creatures, you really get out of hand really fast. And the fact that she's an enchantment creature, she double dips. And it does, the thing about enchantment creatures that's really great is that you want to make sure that when you double dip like that, it makes them more vulnerable. So, a card that destroys target enchantment destroys anything. But again, like your gods, they're indestructible. So, all that destruction, that's the one thing I would say that might be a minor complaint is that the cards that say destroy target is like, okay, well, those don't work at all against the gods. But that's what you'd expect to be the case. So.
Yeah. All right. And so we do have another demigod in here. I went with Cathriel. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry if I'm not. Is Beloved of the Sea. And that's for 1 generic and 2 blue. You get a *3. Cathriel's power is equal to your devotion to blue. And this one has an ability that says creatures and enchantments you control have spells your opponents cast to target this permanent cost 1 more to cast. That's essentially ward, and that can really, really muck up things for you.
Yeah, ward is one of those abilities that I think Wizards of the Coast kind of was like, hexproof is too strong. We're going to go with ward instead. And it's a more balanced ability for sure, especially if you're sitting there trying to take care of something. That Path to Exile that you have is now a colorless and a white to take care of that problem that you have. And it might not seem like much, but you can definitely it's like the mana leak ability or mana tithe ability. The mana tithe ability where you just never expect, no one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Right.
So the next one of the gods that are listed there is Ephara, God of the Polis. It's 2 colors, 1 white and 1 blue for a 6/5 indestructible. As long as your devotion to white and blue is less than 7, Ephara isn't a creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you had another creature enter the battlefield under your control last turn, draw a card. This is I would say this is a little bit of a more narrow god. It definitely has its effect, but again, once you get to the double color, you start to, that getting up to 7 is a little bit more difficult. So it's going to be an enchantment for a lot longer, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and it does, just a slight correction, it is each upkeep. So you have a way to create creatures on somebody else's turn, so you can get, multiple card draws, but if nothing else, you're at least going to be able to get the card draw from your turn. So it can actually represent quite a bit of card draw if you really, build your deck out right. The next one we're going to cover is Krufix, the God of Horizons, and this is for 3 colorless and a green and a blue. It's indestructible, as all the gods are. And as long as your devotion to green and blue is less than 7, it isn't a creature. This one you have no maximum hand size. And the kicker here, why you really want this is, if unused mana were to empty from your mana pool, that mana becomes colorless instead. You don't have You don't need to use all your mana on your turn. You just tap it all, and guess what? You've stored up some mana.
Yeah, and it's it's Simic colors, blue green. So they're like, okay, let's give Simic some more power because it needs it. But yeah, you can keep pumping that up into that big X spell that you want to cast the next turn. You can just keep tapping it and floating it for a while, and they might think you got nothing to do with it, and you might not. But still having that ability to float it all can be really helpful. So we're going to get to our next section here. Gods bestow gifts. So here's another quote, which is, worthy of the respect of the immortal gods is the man who comes as a wanderer, as I now approach your current and your knees, having suffered much. Pretty dark.
Yeah.
But that's Greek mythology for you. So the first one of these bestow cards is one of my favorites. If it's okay if I introduce this one, I kind of jumped in.
Yeah,
it's the Eidolon of Countless Battles. It's one colorless and white for a 0/0. Its bestow cost is 2 colorless and 2 white. Eidolon of Countless Battles and enchanted creature get +1/+1 for each creature you control and +1/+1 for each aura you control. So I play Earl the Miststalker. I've played it for a very long time as a commander, and I love this card because it double dips and it just gets huge. You put it on Earl himself, and he's a force to be reckoned with anyway, but he's just that much scarier with the Eidolon of Countless Battles.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about something that can now hand quickly. This card, I mean, if you don't have an answer for this is your inevitable demise for sure. Another one that we're going to cover is Ghostblade Eidolon, which is 2 colorless and white for a 1/1 double striker. It has a bestow cost of 5 and 1 white, and then gives that ability to the enchanted creature. It gives +1/+1 double strike. Double strike, you want to talk about something that's going to end somebody's game quickly? That'll do it.
Absolutely. With the bestow effect being 5 colors and 1 white, one problem that I have personally as a player is I look at it and I really want to bestow it on something. I want to give something for someone and double strike. But, especially if the game is moving along real fast, you might just want to get that 2 colors and 1 white for a 1/1 double strike out there. That's going to help you. It's going to take out anything 2 toughness or less, especially if you just start getting assaulted. So, but yeah, that's probably one issue that I would have is I want to kind of ramp to that 6. And, if you're playing white-blue, you're probably not get there. But if you play white-green, you might get there. I mean, yeah, that would probably be my only issue with it. But the next one we have actually going on is the Observant Alcide, which is a 2 colors, 1 white for a 2/2 bestow is 4 colorless and 1 white. So it's just 2 colors more to bestow it on something. It's vigilance, and it gives enchanted creature +2/+2 in vigilance. So I kind of like it thematically, and I like that it sort of hops on its back. It gives its power and toughness bonus to the other thing as well as the vigilance itself. I don't know necessarily power-wise how strong it is, but I think enchantment creatures, you have to reach a certain level. Like you need to have a lot in here so that you can get that double dip of the enchantment creature.
Yeah, and I mean, that is the problem with this cube is there's been very few sets that have a lot of the enchantment creatures in there. Really trying to dig into the enchantment creature part of it. So it leads to some, subpar creatures that get in here because I just really want to have that density of enchantment creatures in here. And the next one we're going to cover is we'll cover the Celestial Archon. And this is for 3 colors and 2 white. You get a 4/4 flying first strike. And then you can bestow that for 7. And, that's a pretty hefty cost. But again, you have the option to either bestow or to equip other auras onto this. And flying first strike, just... watch out.
Well, and this is another great card that kind of shows where the ramp has gone. I mean, back in olden days, that 3 colors and 2 white for a 4/4 flying with vigilance was good old Sarah Angel. And admittedly, this is a rare, but it's same power and toughness, same casting cost, and now you have flying and first strike, which arguably I would say is way better than vigilance. Right. I mean, yes, you would love to be able to attack and block at the same time. But yeah, Celestial Archon is a really fun, it's a really good boost for a creature as well. But again, 7, so you got to build up to that. But yeah, I mean, its base cost is great.
Yeah, you kind of wonder if you got some 2020 bestow creatures, how much different those bestow costs would actually be. Because anything, 2020 and on, it seems like they're just pushing the power on these cards. So I have to imagine if they do bestow again, it's going to be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit more favorable for the bestow cost, and it will be much better. The next one we want to cover here is Hypnotic Siren. And this one's an interesting one because it's 1 blue for a 1/1 flyer. But if you bestow it for 7, you can basically mind control somebody else's creature. So it's a high cost to do that, but you can just like snatch in and grab somebody's creature.
Well, and the really funny thing about that is, stealing your opponent's creature can be fun and it can make some people a little salty, but it also gives it +1/+1 in flying. So that creature that they had been wanting to attack you with, all of a sudden you can attack them with it and they can't block. So it's kind of brutal on 2 levels there. But again, it is a huge difference between the main casting cost of 1, which you want to get when you just want to get in there and just start attacking for 1, or do you want to wait? Do you want to take that time to build up that mana so that you can steal their best thing and attack them back? The next one on here actually is Flitterstep Eidolon, which is 1 colorless, 1 blue for a 1/1. It is an enchantment creature spirit. Soft place in my heart for this one.
Nice.
Bestow cost is 5 colorless and 1 blue. Flitterstep Eidolon can't be blocked. So 1/1 that can't be blocked, it's not so bad. Bestowing it on anything else is a little bit scarier, as it gives it +1/+1 and can't be blocked.
Yeah, and just imagine some of the auras that you equip onto that, and you're off to the races. Something that can't be blocked, and you're just drawing cards all of a sudden. Yeah, I'm here for that. We'll jump down to Boon Satyr. That's one of the few ones in green. It's kind of weird. There was not a lot of good green bestow creatures in here, so there's not a whole lot of them. But this one has 1 colorless and 2 green for a 4/2 with flash. And then the bestow cost is 3 generic and 2 green. You flash that in, somebody's attacking, they think they're going to get through. It's like, all right, that's cool. I'll block, and I'm going to flash this in and bestow that right on there.
Right.
Get wrecked.
It also is reminiscent. I really enjoy the concept of like giving your creature steroids, especially when your opponent doesn't know it's going to happen. And a flash enchantment, we didn't see a lot of flash enchantments for a really long time, and now these are starting to come up. You're starting to see these O-ring type cards that have flash on them. Like this, there was a new one that came out in the new Dominaria United that was 5 colorless and 1 white, but it's 1 colorless less for each basic land type you control. But it also has flash, and you can exile anything and just keep it out there.
Leyline's Binding.
Yes, there's the name. I can tell you the card sometimes and cannot tell you the name of it. But this next one, Christian and I both share a passion for cats. And it's 3 colorless and 1 green for a 3/3 enchantment creature cat. The bestow cost is 5 colorless and 1 green, but it's trample. And an enchantment creature gets +3/+3 and has trample. This one, again, near and dear to my heart because I love cats. I have a cat deck and very much enjoyed playing it for a long time until it, unfortunately, in a regular cat deck, got a little bit, there was just too many good cats coming out, so it kind of got pushed out, but it's fantastic for this cube with the enchantment ability as well.
All right, and then our last one in this category is kind of saved the best for last, in my opinion. This is Kessia Curavator. Curavator? I don't know.
Cultivator?
Cultivator. Wow, I really messed that up. That was great. It is 1 generic and Bant. And you get a 4/4 that has whenever an enchanted creature or enchantment creature you control attacks, draw a card. You think you're going to have a little bit of luck with that in this deck?
Yeah. I imagine you probably will just a few times. It's the thing that I would say, in a lot of times with this kind of color combination, once you get to 3 colors, especially in cube, that you're going to get past, this one's going to pass around a few times because this takes a commitment. You're probably going to be playing all 3 colors, so you're probably going to want to take it. But it's green, it's white, and it's blue. It is great. I love the fact that when it attacks, you draw a card. You don't have to deal the damage, which a lot of those cards require you to deal the damage. But that would be my only problem is I would pass this a bunch of times because I'm like, this costs all 3 colors, even though it is strong.
I would have to disagree with you there. For me, I'm first picking this most of the time. I'm just going in and going hard for that, trying to get all the mana fixing I can get and trying to play this just so I can just get those cards. Because, what's sweeter than the words draw a card? All right, so next we're going to go into constellations. God of the Golden Wand. Why have you come, a beloved, honored friend? But it's been so long. Your visits much too rare. Tell me what's on your mind. I'm eager to do it. Whatever I can do, whatever can be done.
All right. That's that reminded me of church. So these constellation cards, these are fun. We talked about these a little bit at the very beginning. This first one is a good one. It's a Pious Wayfarer. It's 1 white for a 1/2. So its base stats are actually pretty decent for 1 mana casting in there. Constellation is whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gets +1/+1 until the end of turn. This one is one of those ones that I'd probably pass it around a few more times because it doesn't have a permanent +1/+1 counter. I jump right on it. But if it's something that gives it a temporary +1/+1, I'd probably pass this one along. I don't know how you feel about this.
For the 1-drops, this is kind of a really good thing. I would pick this up a little bit more highly, just because I get that extra right away, and like you're casting this next turn, you cast an enchantment. Next after that, probably casting another enchantment, and you're just quickly out the gate getting in that extra damage.
Yeah, I think my only thing with that is that since it is just, it's per enchantment, so it just depends on your density. Obviously, you've got a lot of enchantments in this deck, but how many do you play per turn? Do you play 1 per turn, so you get a +1/+1 every turn? That's my thought, is that, ramping up, especially with like the +1/+1 counters, those are permanent. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but again, it becomes a bigger target. So that's my last part about that. But the next one on the list here, if you're okay with it, is this one is one of my absolute favorites. Archon of Sun's Grace. 2 colorless and 2 white for a 3/4. This is an Archon that looks very much like a Pegasus. It's flying, lifelink. Pegasus creatures you control have lifelink. Constellation is whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white Pegasus creature token with flying. Yeah, that's pretty darn strong. You're making flyers every turn that are 2/2s, and they all have lifelink. You ended up just bringing out a ton of creatures, and you're going to swing life very quickly. This is a huge target.
Yeah, I mean, this one, the problem is you're not like... This one's going to get removed as quickly as someone can, because, that is just such a powerful thing. The next one we're going to cover is the Triton Wave Rider, and this is a Merfolk Wizard for 3 generic and 1 colorless, and it has Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, Triton Wave Rider gains flying in a single turn.
Yeah, and this is actually a perfect target for that flash enchantment we were talking about earlier. This is a creature all of a sudden you flash it, give it +4/+2, and it has flying now. So now it is now a 7/5 flying for that turn at least. Yeah, I think they got to deal with that. That's a lot of damage, especially with 20 life, unlike the Commander games of 40 life. Yeah, it's very powerful. The next one we got on here, actually, this one, every time I see it, I wanted to die. And that's what I did for it every single time I saw it in the game. It's super powerful.
Why? I don't understand.
No, it's a great inclusion because it's a very good card, and people don't recognize it always at the beginning. They have to play against it and go, oh, wait a minute. So this is what I was talking about earlier about that +1/+1 counter. So this one is 2 colorless and 1 green for Cetessan Champion. Its base stats are 1/3, which are okay, but the constellation here is whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Cetessan Champion and draw a card. The +1/+1 counter is strong enough, but you draw a card every time too in green. Yep, getting it every time. If I have anything to target it, it's going down.
I mean, why are you going to do that to me, Nathan? I just want to grow my creatures indefinitely and draw my cards. I don't understand. Next, we're going to cover Eidolon of Blossoms, and this is 2 generic and 2 green, and the constellation here is whenever Eidolon of Blossoms or another enchantment enters the battlefield, you draw a card. We've said it 1,000 times here on UberCube. The best words in Magic. Draw a card.
Yeah, this is another one that goes in all of the enchantment decks that I have. I have one that plays 4 ofs, which I know Anthony doesn't approve of, but that's okay. For Constellation, it's just, and they stack on each other so great. Having 2 of them in play, every enchantment draws you 2 cards, and they just keep stacking and stacking. And there's a lot of enchantresses, which we're going to get into next after this group. But just that ability, whenever an enchantment hits the battlefield, draw a card. It's a very simple concept, but very, very strong. Now, the thing is, with this guy, it's 2 colorless and 2 green for a 2/2. So it is, for power and toughness, it's not that strong, but, again, just a great card. The next one we're going to cover is Eutropia, the Twice Favored. And this one also can get out of control. And what do you know? It's Simic colors again. 1 colorless, 1 green, 1 blue for a 2/2 constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. That creature gains flying until the end of turn. So this is just exponentially better than that other one because it gives a +1/+1 counter that doesn't go away. It gets flying until the end of turn, but it does cost 2 colors.
This next section is the gifts from the gods, and this is going to be the enchantresses. I'm just going to list a few of these, and we'll cover one exclusively. The last one, Mace's Enchantress. That one's in all white. We got the Eidolon of Blossoms, and then we have Sithis, Hand of Hardis, and that one's in Selesnya. And these all draw you a card whenever you play enchantment, with the exception of Sithis, which when you play an enchantment, you also gain a life and draw that card.
Important to know, the Mesa Enchantress is the color-shifted version of Yavimaya Enchantress from the original Magic was 1 colorless and 2 green, same effects. You can have both of them in here, but like you said, there is a point when if you overload on one type of card, everybody's drawing. I mean, sure, let's share the party. Everybody draw cards. It's great, but you win a 40 card environment, you could technically draw yourself out. So there can be too much of a good thing in some cases. The last one in this group is actually from one of the commander decks. This one is Tuvasa the Sunlit. 1 green, 1 white, 1 blue, or Bant. Tuvasa the Sunlit gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. Whenever you cast your first enchantment each turn, draw a card. Now, the important thing is with this one is you say first enchantment each turn. So if you have those flash enchantments, if you have those ways to do things during your opponent's turn, you get your 2 for 1. You get it once during your turn, and then you wait, get that flash enchantment in, and you draw another card during their turn too. It's great.
It's an enchantment cube. You're going to have a lot of enchantments, so the power and toughness of this thing is going to skyrocket fast if you can't deal with it. So that's going to cover our Enchantress section there, and now we're going to move on to
the Favor of the Gods. So these are creatures that in all cases, I should say 2 out of 3 cases, these are enchantment creatures. So Transcendent Envoy, which is 1 colorless, 1 white for an enchantment creature, Griffin. It's flying, so it is a 1/2 flying. Aura spells you cast cost 1 colorless less to cast. So, again, you've got tons of auras in here, and you have bestow cards in here. So this is really important to get that in there. And I think probably what we may see in the future, if they do bring bestow back as a mechanic, is you might see ones that say bestow effects cost 2 colorless less to cast, because they will, encourage you to try to play a little quicker. That's just a speculation, but
right. And then we got Naiad of the Hidden Cloves, and this one is, as long as it's not your turn, spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This one, I'll admit it, I'm working on getting the density of stuff to cast on your opponent's turn up and trying to battle with that to make this more prevalent. It's still pretty good if you got some things that you can cast at instant speed or flash and just get that out there.
Have you considered Leyline of Anticipation? Because if they do that, then everything they cast, they could do on their opponent's turn. So that's one possible option. But that does open the door to ley lines. Do you want to have all the ley lines in after that? Probably, maybe not. They're strong, but yeah. So the last one in that group is Herald of the Pantheon, which is the same as the other 2. Enchantment spells cost 1 colorless less to cast, but whenever you cast an enchantment, you gain 1 life, and it is a 2/2 for 2. It's 1 colorless, 1 green. So it's nice little bear here. It does. We love bears here at UberCube because, Uber Bear. And, that 1 life, it's funny because you don't think that 1 little life here and there is going to make a difference, but it really can, especially towards the very end.
Yeah, and I just want to go back to the ley lines. I think that could be something I could consider in the future. That would be a good way to increase the amount of flash that you get in the cube.
This is Uber Bear from the future, and he has an opinion on this particular subject. Sitting on the sidelines will sit on the sidelines no longer. The only reason why I don't run enchantments like that, they kind of fall into the same trap type effect, say of exploration. Those type cards, they don't do anything outside of their spectrum. They can't attack, they can't block, they don't change the game. All they do is quicken the pace. They're more EDH-centric, in my personal opinion. I can see their points, but adding cards in here that simply statically just increase the rate of one player Also would give it a strategic advantage to one side of the table, and the other one would not have it. Uberbear out.
The following was a sponsored segment brought to you by UberCube. So that covers that section. Now we're going to move into the Chosen of the Gods. And these are going to be creatures that you just really want to enchant something onto. You want to throw those auras on. You want to bestow this on here.
Yeah, this is another one of my favorites from my enchantment decks. It's the Elderwood Scion. 3 colors, 1 green and 1 white for a 4/4 trample lifelink. So its base stats are great. It is trample and lifelink. Spells you cast that target it cost 2 colors less to cast. Spells your opponents cast that target it cost 2 colors more to cast. So it basically has ward before ward was a thing. And wow, you can get this thing very big very quickly, and it can get very scary.
That card is insane. Instant pickup for me. The next one is Fang of Shigeki. I think I'm pronouncing that right. For a single green, you get a enchantment creature that is a 1/1 Death Toucher. What more do you really want out of a creature that you want to enchant on than Death Touch for 1?
Absolutely. You put first strike on it, and nothing can block it. First strike on it, nothing blocks it. But you also can use that as that's a rattlesnake card. You can sit there and use that as your defender while you attack with something big, because they're like, I don't want to get my giant creature bitten by the fang. And the last one in this little group is the Illuminator Virtuoso, which is 1 colorless and 1 white for a 1/1 double strike. Very important word. When Illuminator Virtuoso becomes the target of a spell you control, it connives. We have seen conniving being an incredibly powerful ability that just ticks up so well. And again, when you're starting at a 1/1 double strike, anything that's going to increase that power and toughness built into the card, it's just a great card, great inclusion.
Guess what, enchanting and throwing auras and bestowing is. That's targeting that creature. You're conniving every time you try to enchant this or throw an aura on or do anything. And I speak from experience, can get it out of hand.
Absolutely.
You may know that from experience as well. Okay,
sure let it go the first time.
Okay, yep. And that'll wrap up that section right there. And now we have the gods taketh away, the smite of the god. Ah, how shameless these mortals blame the gods. From us alone, they say, come all their miseries, yes. But they themselves, with their own reckless ways, compound their plans beyond their proper share.
So yeah, removal is at a premium. With this is, I mean, you want to have cards that take care of enchantments. Mass removal is at a premium. Too much removal, and you don't want to disable the effectiveness of auras, because that's one of the things about an aura. It's so much fun to be able to enchant a creature, but you are risking a lot. The more auras you put on that one creature, it becomes a 2-for-1, a 3-for-1, a 4-for-1. And if you put all that on one creature, that's the reason why there's no hexproof and protection in here. They're basically left vulnerable so that you can interact with them. You have the option to interact with these.
There's a few enchantments that I have in here that will specifically exile some creatures, which we referenced earlier for the gods. And that is, we have Prayer of Binding, Cast Out, and Elspeth Conquers Death. Those 3 are some of the premium removals you get for those gods. They will exile that creature, and the 2 enchantment ones, they can be removed themselves, and you'll get it back, but still, it has that exile feature, and it can just deal with those gods. So they're primo picks, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. I mean, you have anything that has that Oblivion Ring effect where the enchantment comes into play and that other non-land permanent is exiled. It's great. It's an automatic pickup for me too. You can deal with any problem that you have in the game. Now, again, this is a set where you can take care of enchantments, but it's not, you didn't overload it with ways to destroy enchantments, which is good because, if you put something like a Tranquility in there, nobody's going to play your game ever again because they're going to be like, wow, that just ended the game and I really don't want to play anymore. And that's what Uberbear talks about all the time is, replayability. Some of these ones on here. So actually, I'll recall a recent game that we played with this.
Yeah.
Where in the process of one game, one of my creatures was Beast Within because it was threatening. Another creature was Rapid Hybridization, which are also in here as well. In each of these, I got a 3/3 creature. Eventually, that was the death of Christian because those 3/3 creatures managed to beat him down. But he took care of the threat, but ended up, unfortunately, you give your opponent something, so you give and receive, and the receive was not so great.
Yeah, and despite even that loss, I have now recently included Generous Gift to add in there because I really like the idea of you're removing something of somebody's, but you're also then giving them something. And it's a creature. It's a 3/3 creature. That's not a bad body. And guess what? You can throw enchantments on there too. And that could actually be the death of you. We still have some other removal in here they can use. One that I really like is the Feldar Cub. It's one generic and a white, and you can sacrifice Feldar Cub to destroy target enchantment. It's a 2/2, and it's just, you can do that at instant speed, and it's just great.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times I tend to use it. I just will play it like a disenchant. Like I'll play it, sack it immediately. I've got rid of that problem. But the nice thing is you get it early on, 2 for a 2/2 is not a bad exchange, so you can just trade with your opponent a few times, and now they've got that rattlesnake on the field. They're like, okay, I know the next enchantment I play is what he's going to probably destroy. But I mean, that could be political too. You can hold on to it and keep it there for a while. But one of the great ones on here. So there's a lot of these great green removal, and the first one is the Bamboo Grove Archer, which is 1 colorless and 1 green for a 3/3. That's right, 3/3 for 2. Defender and Reach. So very strong though. Early on, gets a lot of those little things out of the way. It has the ability of Channel, which is 4 colorless and 1 green. Discard Bamboo Grove Archer and destroy target creature with flying. So that is, a great ability. There's, flying is sometimes the only thing green can't handle. So to have this in there and have both abilities with it, because it has Reach too, so it can block those flyers too.
We have other things like Reclamation Sage, Acidic Slime, and Concave Naturalist all in there. Those are all removal on a stick. That's just something you really want. If you go with the Acidic Slime, you got Death Touch too. And another recent include is Aura Mutation for Selesnya, a green and a white. It's an instant that can destroy target enchantment, and then you create X 1/1 green sapling creature tokens, where X is the enchantment's converted mana cost.
Yeah, that's very strong. That's rare level strong, which it is a rare. It happens to be. But this is, it's great for those colors because, Selesnya always has been about, destroying something, but also creating a bunch of creatures that you can now attack with. And you just spread out and attack en masse. And, a lot of times the games can swing and you get down to that very last couple points of damage. And just getting those little guys through can be enough.
Yeah. The last one we're going to cover this first section is Triva's Charm. And it costs a Bant to cast, and it's an instant, and you get to choose one. You can destroy an enchantment, remove target attacking creature from the game, or draw a card, then discard a card from your hand. The options you have with this just make this card great and easy pickup.
Yeah. This goes again with my idea of once you get to 3 colors, it can be a little bit more difficult to cast. However, like you said, all 3 effects are very powerful in this game. They're going to do something for you every single time. So yeah, it's probably a first pick. So the next is, the Anger of the Gods. Not to mention the actual card Anger of the Gods, but that's not in Bant, so we're not going to use that one. But there are definitely cards that have that destroy all effect. The first one I've used a lot in token decks. It's a lot of fun. It's Martial Coup, which is X and 2 white for a sorcery. Put X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens into play. If X is 5 or more, destroy all other creatures. So it can be really great to be able to populate your side of the board and just destroy everything else. It can be rough getting rid of some of your own creatures, but if you're the only one with 5 1/1s, you're probably gonna have a few shots in that might be the end of the game right there. Very swingy.
Yep, and as it was pointed out in the pre-pod discussion, this will likely be cut for a Wrath of the Gods that has the Theros theme to it, because why not? It has the Theros theme. It should just really be in there. So, we're going to talk about it, but it's probably getting the axe. Yeah. And the next one we have is another one that has the Theros theming. It is Shatter the Sky. It's 2 generic and 2 white. And each player who controls a creature with power 4 or greater draws a card and then destroy all creatures. You want to have some way to wipe the board in this cube, but there comes that time when you just really need to do that, but don't want to have it overabundant. So you have players actually have the agency to build their board and play the game.
Right.
And that's going to wrap it up for that section. And overall, this cube is all about playing the enchantments and getting benefits from playing those enchantments, really digging into that mythology aspect of it. This cube will support 2 to 4 players very easily. The games are very interactive generally, and when you're going with a 4-player draft, you're going to want to try to probably pick up a 2-color pair. If you're going with a 2-player, you're probably going to end up in just all 3 colors.
Yeah,
that's about it. Any other thoughts you got there?
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of fun. You've got a lot of cards that double dip. You got the bestow creatures, the enchantment creatures. They are you're getting those effects for enchantments that are really fun and building on top of each other. There was originally when bestow came out, there was a picture of what a bestow creature might look like, and it was literally sitting on the shoulders of this guy walking around. And I thought it was just a great image. And every time I think of bestowing an angel on something else, it's just like on its shoulders, and I just thought it was a really funny image.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really fun cube to play. I do love enchantments. I've got like I said, I have an Ur deck, and then I have the Shrines deck as well for Commander. Enchantments are fun. It's classic Magic. It's an enchantment. So I highly recommend it.
Hi, this is Uber Bear coming off the sidelines. I hope that this has been a fun, interesting conversation. We wanted to do a diversity of insight here. We wanted to actually integrate some of our players. We wanted to pull in Christian being the curator of the Bant Enchantments cube, and Nathan being just a pure lover of the idea of Bant Enchantment. So I didn't feel it, frankly, appropriate for me to steal the show on this particular conversation. And I wanted to let these two do the thing that they enjoyed the most. Talk about bestow, talk about consolation, talk about just their passion for Bant enchantments in general. So I hope that this has been an interesting and just an immersive learning experience, bringing in the idea of the Iliad and the Odyssey into this, because that is the inspiration for Theros in itself. And it really brings to home the ideas that this cube is trying to express. I will have included in the show notes all of the images of the cards that we have discussed. In addition to, I'll have the link to Christian's cube, and we'll hopefully have Nathan's cube in the future. Yeah, we're working on this idea. But other than that, I wanted to kind of end the show on another quote that I think is just fantastic. Any moment might be our last. Everything is more beautiful because we're doomed. You will never be lovelier than you are now. We will never be here again. Homer, the Iliad. Other than that, this has been a fun show. Thank you to both Christian and Nathan for joining our little podcast here and giving their insights on this just beautifully curated cube. And if you love the show, and we truly, truly hope that you do, we'd appreciate a 5-star review on your favorite player. In addition to, you can find us at Twitter at UberCubeMTGPod, or you can reach us at UberCubeMTGPodcast at gmail.com, or you can link us on Discord at UberCube, or hashtag UberCube, whatever you choose. And you can also find us on Patreon /UberCube. Other than that, I just want to say the thing we always say here at UberCube is Happy Cubing!